Hello everyone and welcome. In this lecture we look at the named tuple method in our collections module. As usual, we start by importing the collection module. Import collections. Before we see this named tuple, let's start by looking at regular tuples. Let's say we have a tuple and save it in a variable called x. We can say James, let's say 16, and then male. If we call our object x, our tuple, we see that it's a tuple and it has the elements James, 16, and male. We can index our tuple. Let's say x at index 1. We have 16. X at index 2, we have male. Similarly, if we have another tuple object, let's say Sarah, 18, let's say grade 12, gender is female. Okay, we can index it. Let's say index -1. We have female. Now that we have seen regular tuples, let's see named tuples. So named tuple allows us to assign names and number index to each of these members here, to each of these elements. Let's see an example. So we can create a named tuple object by using the named tuple method. So collections that named tuple, and let's create a student named tuple, and then we can use certain variables like name of the student, age of the student, and grade of the student. Okay, so we have a main object student, and let's save this in a variable called, let's say student, stud for student. So if we call the type method on our student object, we see it's of type. And what we're gonna do next is we can use this named tuple student and then assign values to name, age, and grade. So we can say, let's say student 1 is James. So we can say James is equal to our name tuple object, which is student, and then we can assign name, age, and gender. So name, okay, instead of James, let's say student 1. So here we can say name is equal to James, and then age is equal to, let's say 15, and grade is equal to, let's say 10. So that's student 1. Student is not defined. Okay, let's save this. Let's change this to student. Now let's run it, and let's go here and then run it again. Okay, so if we call stud1 again, we have student name is equal to James, age is 15, and then grade is 10. Let's create another student object. Let's say stud2 is equal to student. Let's say name is equal to Sarah, age is equal to 18, grade is equal to 12. And if we call stud2, we have student named Sarah, age is 18 and grade is 12. And we can use this attributes. We can use this name, age and grade, and then use it on our stud1 and stud2 named tuples. So we can say stud1 dot name, and that will give us James. Similarly, we can say stud1 dot grade, and we have 10. Similarly, we have stud2 dot age, that's 18, and stud2 that name will give us Sarah. Let's create one more named tuple object, let's say, and save it in a variable called employee. So we can say collections dot named tuple, and let's say employee, and then we'll use attributes like employee name, employee age, and let's say department. Now let's create some more of this employee object. We can say, let's say employee 1 Smith. We can say employee, and then pass name will be what? Name is equal to Smith. Age, let's say 42, and then department, let's say finance. Department finance. Let's create another named tuple object. Jane is equal to employee, name is equal to Jane, let's say age 37, and department is equal to, let's say, IT. Now that we have our tuple objects, we can find out various attributes for these two objects. For instance, we can say Jane dot age, and that will give us 37. Jane dot department will give us IT. And we can do the same for Smith. If we want to find out the department, we can call the department method on our Smith object. Smith dot department gives us finance. So we can access the various fields of our named tuple objects by just passing the field on our named tuple object. One important thing to remember is that when we pass these various fields, it's important not to duplicate those fields, otherwise we'll get an error. And it's also important not to use any of the Python keywords for our fields. That will also give you an error. For instance, let me copy this, then paste it here. So if I duplicate one of these field attributes, let's say name, and run it, I'm going to get an error. Here it says encountered duplicate field name. Name is duplicated. So it's important not to duplicate your field names. Another thing is we cannot use any of the Python keywords. For instance, if I say def here and run it, you get an error saying type names and field names cannot be a keyword. So the def keyword, the def keyword, is one of the Python keywords. Okay, so those are important points to remember while naming your fields in named tuples. Great. This is what I have for the named tuple method, and in the next lecture we'll look at another method in the collections module. Thank you everyone, and I'll see you at the next lecture.